Hello everybody, how are you guys? This is exciting. It's time for another episode of Lyrics Explained. Now, as usual, that's where I rely on my 6 years at the University of Alaska and the very highly recognized School of Lyric Appreciation. I'm going to use all that training to break down this very exciting album. Now, this is not a new album, but it has persisted so long at the top of the charts that it deserves a closer look and deserves our respect. It's a country classic and is really rated by so many artists in that community and in other genres as one of their favorite albums. It's Chris Stapleton's Traveler. We're going to go track by track and find out what each song is about, to give you the background, the context of why the song was written, what it's about, so that you can enjoy your music even more. So let's just kick it right off with track number 1. It's Traveler, the title track of the album. This is a song that explores interplanetary space travel. And when you talk about an artist like Chris Stapleton, who is from Kentucky, he was born and raised in Kentucky, now lives in Nashville, of course, Music City. You go from Kentucky to Tennessee and you start to get a sense of the world, to the point where you start to think about the world and its role in our billion-star universe. And you start to think about, what if we could do interplanetary travel? Number 2 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's classic album Traveler is Fire Away. Now, this talks about an incident that happened on the band bus as they rolled through the night through America. An argument between many of the band members on what is the best Kentucky bourbon. And it's like, fire away, fire your shot on your opinion, because I know you're wrong. That's how it went down. Fire at me. You know, you got some people arguing for classics like Maker's Mark, and others are like, Maker's Mark? Come on. They're talking Old Crow. You're looking at Ezra Brooks, Eagle Rare, Booker's. You know, the opinions were firing like bullets in the Old West. Pew, pew, pew. It was exciting, guys, but also a little contentious. But in the song, they talk about how it let the steam out, let the tensions out, and the band after that played some of the best music of their tours. Now, of course, number 3 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's album Traveler is this beautiful song, Tennessee Whiskey. Now, Tennessee Whiskey is the story of a classic train route that ran through Kentucky and Tennessee called Tennessee Whiskey. And that was the major cargo on this train and why it was robbed so many times. And before it was a locomotive train route, it was a route on originally the Pony Express and then the early wagon trains that came across both Kentucky and Tennessee. It became known as the Tennessee Whiskey Route. And that's why this song touches so many people's hearts, because it talks about how the West was opened up through the sale of illegal Tennessee whiskey. Now, number 4 on the track list is Parachute, and this is really kind of a dangerous situation in this song, because Chris Stapleton sings about how they decided to take a break from the tour and go to one of those rural airfields where you can learn how to skydive, and how he got a parachute that wasn't entirely packed right. It did open, guys, but the way it was packed, it was kind of at an angle with some of the lines were pulled down, so he kind of came down in a twisting, turning way that from the ground looked like acrobatics. The rest of the band who had already landed looked up and go, whoa, Chris Stapleton is pretty good at this. He looks like he's writing letters. He might even be penning a song. Maybe he had a song in his head and he was skywriting it in his brain so that he didn't forget it. Now, number 5 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's Traveler is Whiskey and You. It talks about the bar called Whiskey that was the number 1 watering hole in his town that he grew up in, Staffordshire. It's an emotional song because he wasn't old enough to go into the bar. So he would sit outside the bar. He couldn't even go on the property. He had to be on the public sidewalk there. And he would sing songs at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, talking about growing up in that area. And they used some of the themes that a lot of the locals know. And therefore, he started to get some of his first paid gigs before he was 10 years old. Exciting song. Now, number 6 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's legendary album Traveler is Nobody to Blame. And this talks about at a tailgate when you're cheering on your favorite team with your friends and relatives at a tailgate party and somebody breaks out the cornhole game. And you might have had too many cocktails, maybe too many Bud Lights, and you just cannot score. You cannot throw the beanbag with any skill. Either you're arcing it too much or you're bringing it in too low. But the point is, because you might have had too many Bud Lights, you just are no use. You are no benefit or value to your partner, and you're losing game after game. But do you give up the game to somebody else that wants to play? No. Why? Because you've had too many Bud Lights. Now, number 7 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's Traveler is More of You. Now, this is a follow-up to his earlier hit called S'mores of You. Now, in S'mores of You, he talked about growing up and camping out with his family, with relatives, and later on with his buddies when he was old enough to do that. And what did they do when they went to camp out? They started the campfire and they broke out the s'mores. Now, S'mores of You complains about how most people really don't know how to properly create a s'mores. It lamented that the expertise that he learned as a kid was lost on the next generation. Now, number 8 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's Traveler is When the Stars Come Out. What a beautiful song. He talks about when the stars come out on a clear Kentucky night. You start to think about things when it's later on, everybody's gone to bed. Maybe you're on the porch and you're just strumming the guitar. Maybe he's always thinking of new country hits, guys. He has so many of them. But he sees this beautiful sky with no clouds and the stars twinkling. And you start to think about your life. You start thinking about Super Bowl bets that you made in the past that didn't pan out. And especially this time of year, we've got a Super Bowl coming up. He may be really relating to this song today because he's thinking about the bets he wants to make and how much money he's lost in the past. So what do? Do you double down and bet more? Number 9 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's Traveler is Daddy Doesn't Pray Anymore. Now, it talks about one of their band members. They nicknamed Daddy. He was the drummer for many years with the band. And this ties back to the earlier track about Super Bowl betting. Well, in this case, Daddy, the drummer, liked to bet on college football. Now, you think NFL betting is very chaotic and hard to predict. College is even worse. And the song talks about how at a certain point he just gave up betting on college football altogether. Why? Because he had to pray every week that he wouldn't lose his shirt. And he just came to the realization one day that he'd be better putting his money into Bitcoin. Number 10 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's great album Traveler is Might As Well Get Stoned. Now, of course, he lives in Hit City, Music City now. He grew up in Kentucky. And when you're in that town for any length of time, you realize it's not the Nashville of even 10 years ago. It's Boom City. And Nashville has then, of course, got the subsequent traffic increase. And he's talking about sitting at a stoplight in Nashville now where you may not even be able to get through the light on one turn of the light. You might have to wait, turns green, and you don't get through. It hits the red, you're still at the same stoplight. And at this point, he's thinking, I might as well get stoned. Okay? Now, he's not driving, he's the passenger. When you're an artist at the level of Chris Stapleton, you don't even have to drive yourself anywhere anymore. Number 11 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's classic album, Traveler, is Was It 26? This talks about getting older and looking back on your youth when you were a little wild. And even in your 20s, especially when you're in the music business, which has no boundaries. All right, because when you're an artist, you need to think creatively. And so it talks about looking at his youth when they were a little bit crazier. And was it 28 when that wild thing happened, or was it 24, or was it 26? The downside of having a creative brain is sometimes it's hard to lock on to facts and lock on to memories. And so this song explores that dichotomy between having the creative brain that makes you a superstar, but also not really being able to remember where you left your car keys. Number 12 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's monster classic album from 2015, the album Traveler, is The Devil Named Music. Now, think about growing up and wanting to become a country music artist. And you know how many people are going to make it to that level? Well, how many are there? How many people named Chad tried to put on a hat even though they grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta, okay, and haven't been on a farm their entire life, but maybe they had a little bit of velvet to their voice and they thought, well, I can become a country star. Well, no, Chad. You have to have insight into life like a Chris Stapleton or a Garth Brooks. So if you want to dance with the devil named Music, you have to tap into your own pain, or you're just going to be another flash in the pan in Music City, USA. Number 13 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's great album Traveler is Outlaw, State of Mind. Have you ever started to get your normal breakfast? And maybe your wife is there, your partner, your brother, your uncle, your grandma, and they say, hey, why don't you try something different? So, for example, maybe you're a cereal and milk guy. You break out the bowl, you break out the milk, and they chime in and they go, hey, why don't you try some scrambled eggs for breakfast? You got to tap into your outlaw state of mind sometimes and break out of your breakfast habits. You've got to expand your brain. And you also have to be open to suggestions from other people if you want to grow as a person. So that means you got to get a little radical. You got to get a little wild. You got to color outside the lines. Give up your breakfast bowl and your Captain Crunch that you always have. Number 14 on the track list of Chris Stapleton's great album Traveler from the year 2015 is Sometimes I Cry. Now, this is really interesting coming from a real man like Chris Stapleton. This isn't one of the fake country music artists that are out there. This is a guy that's lived life. And in a lot of ways, he is trying to show you when you need to cry to just let it go. Don't try to hold it in. So let me take a personal example. Okay, I'm a Browns fan. I wrote a song similar to this called Always I Cry. And that comes from more than 2 decades of losses. Well, there you go, guys. I just went track by track, all 14 songs in this beautiful classic album, Traveler, by Chris Stapleton, an album that has become transcendent in the country music world.